everybody. So I guess you have 2 days left in your retreat? All right. Well, it's still a lot of time to practice, so please stay focused and determined till the end. But it can be natural for the mind to want to start thinking about what you plan on doing after retreat, going back home, all the different things. So that's something we all experience. I'll just introduce myself a little bit because I know a few of you, but for many people it's the first time. My name is Sampanno. I'm American. Became a monk first in South Korea. So when you heard me doing the Korean Heart Sutra, that was a chant we did there every day. Lived in Korea for 6 years, mostly in the south part of South Korea, near Suncheon and Gwangju. So that was Mahayana Buddhism. And after some time I became interested in the Thai forest tradition. I think I found some books online, Lumpur Cha and Lumpur Sumedho. And I think reading those books and hearing those Dhamma talks, I think was the first time when I heard the earliest teachings of the Buddha in a way that really, really made sense. Because a lot of times, if you just read what the scholarly writings say, somehow it seems kind of abstract, and it didn't really hit home. But when I heard Lumpur Cha's teachings, and it was. It really struck me as something special. So I wanted to practice in the Thai forest tradition, and at the time I was living in Korea and had a visa to be there, but it was easier just for me to go back to America. I visited Abhayagiri monastery. Many of you heard of it? Anybody ever been there, Abhayagiri? No? Well, maybe someday. Lumpur Pasanno is the abbot there, and he's very well respected. He's a disciple of Lumpur Cha, contemporary with Ajahn Sumedho, Lumpur Sumedho. So I went there and became a monk. So I switched traditions, switched from Mahayana to Theravada, and then I ordained there, and that was about 6 years ago. So is the sound okay? Everybody hear me right? Okay. Okay, so, and I actually just came here about 4 to 5 months ago. So I came from Abhayagiri to Thailand, and Wat Mapjan, they do the visas for most of the monks here. So it's sort of it's a nice thing that they do for us, where they'll handle all the visa paperwork, and then we can practice at Wat Mapjan or here or any other monastery that's considered a branch monastery of Wat Mapjan. So a number of the monks here are kind of doing that. Also a lot of foreign monks in Thailand that are connected to Wat Nanachat, Ubon Ratchathani. But I still haven't been there yet. But anyway, so I'm kind of new here, but I think probably many people share the same feeling. It's a really nice monastery. It's got a really good feel to it. The local people are super kind and generous, and nice monastic community. Yeah, nice place to practice. So I'm happy for all of you that you have this opportunity, and seems like everybody's practicing well. It's always inspiring for us to see people that come to the monastery and want to follow the precepts, want to wake up early, do all the things that monks do, because we do it over the long time, but sometimes we don't always have as much freshness in our practice because it's sort of day in, day out. But when you see people that come and taking 8 or 9 days, really want to practice and make the most of it, it's very nice to see. So I was thinking about one Dhamma teaching that I think is useful, especially for people that are in retreat. It's definitely important for all monastics, and it's one of the 10 baramis. And in what would it be? Either Pali or Sanskrit, it is nekkhamma, as translated as renunciation. And what I've found is that it's important to think about renunciation in the Buddhist sense, and keep in mind that it's a very positive, very wholesome thing. I think people think about it in the sense of the context of other religions, or in more of a worldly sense of kind of being like, all the good things in life, all the things that we like, are like taken away from us, you know? Don't have dinner, don't have entertainment, don't have the different distractions and fun things, say when we come to a monastery and keeping the 8 precepts. But in Buddhism, it's really different than that, because first of all, it's a voluntary choice that we willingly choose renunciation, and it's incredibly simplifying and liberating. Just if you can even just think about all the complexity that people have in their lives, just to simplify one's daily schedule, simplify one's activities, simplify the surroundings. There's so much stress that can be reduced just by that. So that's one aspect of it that's important to keep in mind. The other is that there's a teaching in the Dhammapada where the Buddha says something like, I can't remember it exactly, but he says, if a wise person can gain a greater happiness by forsaking a lesser happiness, then they should do so. So if there's something greater and higher and more satisfactory that can be gained by renouncing, by giving up something that's lesser, then it's in our interest to do so. So the whole idea of renunciation in Buddhism has to do with happiness, it has to do with pleasure, and the basic thing is that it's giving up what's smaller, giving up what's lesser, giving up things that are coarse, and with the faith, and you could say it's a very measured, it's a faith that's based on understanding, it's based on people that we see that have practiced a lot. They look much happier, they look like they have more satisfaction in their life, so we're giving up lesser forms of happiness for something greater, and that's the basic idea of renunciation. So there's different things in the suttas that I've come across where the Buddha kind of gives different teachings related to this that I think are very helpful. One is related to how the Buddha talks about pleasure. So in the suttas, the Buddha will also often say things like a king, a head of state, somebody that has all the wealth and power in the world, is endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. The Buddha says this about himself before he became a renunciant. When he was living the palace life, he had the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. And this is the Buddha talking about the objects of sensuality. Forms that we can see, sounds that we can hear, odors, tastes, etc., related to the 5 senses. And the Buddha calls these the kama guna, something like the strands or the chords of sensual pleasure. And the idea is that these are the things that the mind goes out to that kind of preoccupy the mind in terms of sensuality. But they're not actually the problem in themselves. It's not that having nice things or having good things, having things that are desirable, that's not the problem. It's the mind's preoccupation, the mind going out, the mind fantasizing, the mind being attached and delighting in these things. So this is related to the Buddha's talk about sensuality, as I mentioned, kama with a long A, in Pali. And so the renunciation is nekkhamma, even just etymologically. Nekkhamma is something like, maybe it's like separation from kama, or renouncing, withdrawing from kama. Kama, sensuality here. And it kind of centers around meditation and bhavana, development of the mind. But even just first, I think we can all see on the level of sila, when we undertake the 5 precepts, or taking the 8 precepts at the monastery on certain times in our life, there's an aspect of renunciation involved in sila, because there's many forms of happiness, things that people do to try to find happiness in their life that are related to things that are unwholesome. So the Buddha didn't say that all sensuality is unwholesome, but there are many types where people do things to try to find happiness, try to relieve stress, such as drinking, drug use, forms of entertainment, and that we can see that really have lots of very serious long-term consequences. So there's this thing that we all see, and this is an aspect of wisdom, of seeing what the pleasure and what the gratification that we get from something, but then what the long-term effects of that might be. And this is where the Buddha is encouraging us to have wisdom and contemplation in all the various forms of ways that we seek happiness. Because it's not that when we try to meditate, it's not that we don't seek happiness. We still seek happiness through meditation, through the path, through Dhamma, but we're seeking happiness in wiser and wiser ways. So for people that don't know the Dhamma, they might try to seek happiness or seek a profit, seek benefit in the world, but they often do it in ways that cause them and cause other people harm in the long run. And you can see that just by keeping the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, this is really stopping all those forms of pleasure-seeking and happiness-seeking that are that lead to long-term negative consequences. Types of happiness that hurt other people, that hurt ourselves in the long run. These are the first things that we renounce with keeping the precepts. And so there's a great happiness to be gained by the precepts. It's a long-term happiness. And we can see in here, this is the basic principle, that we're giving up maybe habits that we've had before. And in the beginning it's difficult, because it's not that when you give up a lesser type of happiness, say if it's alcohol, something like that, you stop drinking, it's not that by giving that up that right away you're going to feel all the benefits of sobriety. But little by little, by giving it up, by sticking with it, by keeping those wholesome commitments to the precepts, then those benefits from living a sober, living a clear life, they'll come over time. And it's the same thing with all these different aspects of renunciation. So that's renunciation on the level of sila. On the level of meditation, renunciation becomes more and more profound. I think probably everybody's heard the Pali terms piti or sukha. Piti or sukha, when they're in the context of meditation, are like delight and joy, rapture, happiness. And these are spiritual types of happiness. So it's very important that we are aware of this, and that there's really happiness that the Buddha is telling us that we can find in our meditation, that we can find in chanting, in studying Dhamma, but we really have to pay attention to it. Because it's different than the type of happiness that we can find through entertainment or other things. It's not, it doesn't stimulate the mind, but it's based on a peaceful mind and a very clear mind. So when you look at the jhanas that the Buddha talks about as the 8th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the way that the jhanas are taught has all these aspects of this spiritual happiness. All these different factors come together in the jhanas. So there's the way it's usually talked about. The Buddha will say something like a meditator goes to the forest, goes to the root of a tree, goes to a secluded place. They sit down to meditate. And then the formula for the jhanas is that in Pali it's vivicheva kamehi, vivicha akusalehi dhammehi. Secluded from sensuality, secluded from unwholesome states, the meditator attains the first jhana, which has 5 jhana factors, but the first of these is, I believe it's piti. Piti is in all of them, or maybe the first 3. Piti, sukha, ekagata, so it's like delight, happiness, collectedness, or singleness of mind. And see, these are all these spiritual types of happiness that I'm talking about. So when it comes to renunciation on the level of bhavana, of developing our minds, that's when actually the mind has to separate from sensuality temporarily altogether. So that's what the Buddha means, secluded from sensuality, secluded from kama, and secluded from unwholesome states. So that's unwholesome states is usually talked about as the 5 hindrances. So these are the preconditions for experiencing the happiness or the bliss of meditation. Piti, sukha, ekagata, samadhi, all these things. The mind has to separate from sensuality for a time. And this is something that many people can experience in their meditation. Anybody can experience it if all the causes and conditions are there. We may experience it for short times. But we really have to know that this is a very important, it's like a signpost that the Buddha is directing our attention to. This, the 8th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha discusses as something is that when we practice sati, when we practice mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness with whatever meditation object that we're working with, if the proper conditions are there in terms of keeping the precepts, having right view, having right energy, all these other factors of the path, then the right mindfulness can lead to right samadhi. The 7th factor leads to the 8th factor. And this is when the mind kind of comes together and starts to really, really settle down, and then a whole new type of happiness and pleasure is experienced in that state. And the Buddha gives a lot of importance to this. He says this is a pleasure that one should not be afraid of. It's a pleasure that's blameworthy, blameless. It's not blameworthy, meaning it doesn't lead to any difficulties. It doesn't lead to any problems. It only leads to benefits. Whereas the Buddha says that sensuality has many drawbacks, many problems. It's accompanied by a lot of stress, even when it's in a wholesome way. There's a very interesting sutta where the Buddha is talking to some monks, and these might be junior monks. Maybe they're living with the Buddha, living with their teachers. And the Buddha says, if you go away and are living on your own, and people ask you, are the disciples of the Buddha, are the monks who are disciples of the Buddha seekers of pleasure? How should you answer them? Is the Sangha, are the people in the Sangha, are they pleasure seekers? And the Buddha says, well, you should ask them in return, what sort of pleasure are you talking about? So how do we define pleasure? And the Buddha says, if you define pleasure as the 5 strands of sensual pleasure, things that are nice to look at, things that are nice to listen to, good taste, good sounds, etc., then the Sangha are not pleasure seekers in that sense. But if you define pleasure as the rapture, the happiness, the gladness, the delight that comes from meditation, that comes from the first jhana, the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana, then you should say that the disciples of the Buddha are pleasure seekers. The Buddha says it's good to seek that type of pleasure. One should pursue it, the pleasures of meditation, as much as one can. So I found this to be very interesting, because I think we, human beings, we really need happiness, we need pleasure, we need satisfaction. But it's just that we seek it in the wrong ways. And so much of the problems in the world are exactly because of this. People looking for happiness in the wrong manner. But it's not, the hard part of renunciation is that it's not that the moment we start to meditate, it's not that we're going to experience the jhanas right away, unless we really have those causes from a past life. For most people, it's quite difficult. It's difficult to get the mind to settle down. Keeping with the meditation object is difficult. It's keeping up meditation practice in daily life is also a challenging thing. So this is really where faith and understanding have to play a very important role. And that if we want to keep the precepts, we want to meditate, we want to have discipline in our lives, the Buddha is definitely saying that there's great benefits that will come from all that. But when those benefits will come, how long it will take, depends on all the various conditions that have to be a part of it. So this is where the faith has to get us from renouncing lesser things to experiencing the benefits of renunciation, experiencing those higher types of happiness. And so this faith is really a faith in karma. It's a faith in cause and effect, and knowing that however we are in our lives, everything that we're experiencing, however things are for us, are the result of causes and conditions, are the result of actions we've done in the past, actions that we're currently doing. It's not that things are random or things that are happening to us for reasons beyond our control, but that all the important aspects in our life, the pleasure, the pain, the way we see the world, all these things are up to us, but they're based on what we've done largely in the past, how we've conditioned ourselves to be. There's a reflection that we often do, which is a reflection on the Brahma Viharas. May all beings be well, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering. But the final part of this is that all beings are the owners of their actions, heir to their actions, born of their actions, related to their actions, abide, supported by their actions. Whatever actions they do, for good or for ill, of that they will be the heir. So this is just the important point of the Buddha's teachings, that it's incredibly realistic, in that we can't blame other people, we can't blame society. We really have to look very carefully at ourselves and all the things that we're doing, because it's not just the meditation technique, or it's not just one factor, it's all the different factors and conditions in our life that influence our state of mind, that influence the level of our mind. And all these things have to change and have to grow, have to develop for our minds to become more and more peaceful, more and more radiant. So that's where this path is. It's really all-inclusive. There's nothing in our life that is You could say there's nothing that's irrelevant. Everything that we do in terms of our own actions, body, speech, and mind, has an effect. So we have to take 100% responsibility. But the good part about that is it's up to our control. It's not something that another being, a god, a deva, or anything like that is. We're not under their power. It's 100% up to us. So this takes a real kind of a real sobriety and a real sense of responsibility. And this is where, Ajahn Achala will say, this practice is difficult, but it's the best thing there is to do. What else can be more important than trying to benefit ourselves and benefit other people, improving our kamma, our actions of body, speech, and mind, and developing our mind to higher and higher levels. When Lumpur Anand came here and for Katina, he gave a short talk, I believe it was the day before Katina, and he'll often say how the minds of human beings, well, we still have these human bodies, we're in the human realm, but our minds can be really on any level of the 6 realms of existence. So it's not too hard to look around in the world and see examples of people whose minds are really just filled with suffering and filled with negativity, and they're living in many ways like beings in the hell realms. People with a lot of fear and a lot of attachment, living sort of like hungry ghosts. People just living according to their instincts, just instincts to eat, to sort of the fight or the flight response, living very similar to animals. In Buddhism, these are considered the 3 unfortunate realms: the realms of the hell dwellers, the realms of the hungry ghosts, the realms of the animals. A lot of fear and a lot of suffering. And even in the human state, we can see people like that. But it's possible for us, with the teachings of the Buddha, with spiritual teachings, with meditation, and different practices that we do, to really raise our minds to what's really essential about being a human, and raise our minds also to the level of devas, of gods. The Ajahns will often say that the essential point for being a human is keeping the 5 precepts. Because when we keep the 5 precepts, we're not harming other people. We're not really engaged in anything unwholesome, and all the really beautiful human qualities of generosity, of gratefulness, respect for parents, respect for elders, respect for teachers. These really beautiful aspects that we see in the human world, they really come from a life that's grounded on the 5 precepts. And above that, by higher levels of renunciation, keeping the 8 precepts, and developing, the Buddha calls this adicitta ayogo, devotion to the higher mind. So focusing on making our minds nobler and nobler, more refined, going beyond sort of the coarseness that's there in the human realm when we're sort of attached to bodily things, food, attached to the body, attached to, say, the earthly sort of realm, then it's hard for our mind to go higher. But if we really set our sights on things that are there in religion, in spirituality, then there's a possibility, Lumpur Anand was talking about this, of bringing our mind to the level of a deva. This is something really interesting in the Buddha's teachings, where all the states of meditation, the various jhanas, first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, these correspond to the happiness there in the heavenly realms as well. So the happiness that a meditator can experience in the first jhana is, I forget exactly the correspondence, but it's one of the sense sphere heavens. Many different heavens in Buddhism. So it's like when we're in the first jhana, our mind is equivalent to a deva who's been born in that heavenly realm in terms of the happiness that we experience. So it's not that we have to pass away from the human realm to go to heaven. It's that if we have these spiritual qualities, if we have these conditions in our meditation that can bring our mind to a higher level, we can experience divine happiness. So this is incredibly, it's very hopeful and it's very inspiring. Because in the human realm, we see a lot of bad things. You turn on the TV, you look at the news, a lot of it's depressing. There's not too much that's inspiring. Sometimes we see really beautiful stories of people being generous, people being kind, and these things lift our mind up. But if we really turn our attention to Dhamma and turn our attention away from the world, then we can keep our mind going in this direction for as much as possible. So Lumpa Anand talked about the possibility of raising our mind to the level of a deva and then also to the level of a Brahma. So the devas still have, they experience delight and happiness, but there's still some sort of sensuality that they experience in terms of, they live in beautiful heavenly realms, beautiful heavenly palaces, and they experience different sort of good things, deva pleasures. But higher than that is the experience of the Brahmas, and what the Brahmas experience is exactly what we cultivate with the Brahma Viharas. So metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, these universal and boundless states of mind, saying that they're Brahma Viharas, these are the dwelling places of the Brahmas. And if our mind is established in those qualities, then that state of mind is identical then to the Brahmas. So I think that it's just so amazing in the Dhamma that, for one, it's putting the primacy, everything that we do, the most important thing in there is our state of mind. It's our mind, it's our intention, it's the quality of our mind that we bring to whatever activity, whatever aspect of our life. It's not the outward manifestations, the outward appearances that matter so much. It's our quality of mind, or the quality of minds that we see in other people. So we see in the Buddha's teachings that he gives the most importance to this. The first quote in the Dhammapada is one that always struck me as very, very beautiful and very important. The Buddha says, "Mind is the forerunner of all states. Mind is chief, all things are mind-made. Speak or act with an impure mind, and suffering follows, as the wheels of the cart follow the footprints of the ox that pulls it." All things are created by mind. Mind is the forerunner, mind is the chief. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows. I think it says something like one's shadow, which never departs. You speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will be with us all the time. So, what we're trying to do with our practice is something that is, it's definitely a challenge. There's definitely many, many difficult things and obstacles and things that we need to work through. But the possibilities that the Buddha, the Arhats, the Bodhisattvas, the possibilities that they show us and that they teach, the potential that they manifest is something that is, there's really nothing better than that. There's nothing beyond it. And so I hope that everybody can continue to be inspired in your practice. I find Ajahn Achalo's teachings and Q&As really very inspiring for myself, and sort of the conditions, the various conditions that he helps to create, such as these sort of pilgrimages in India, practicing at the Bodhi tree, and his sort of his appreciation and gift with creating beautiful Buddhist, you could say things like the way he's created the monastery, his appreciation for art and chanting and all these sort of things. These are all things that that really brighten my mind, and I find them very inspiring as well. So maybe some people will be going to the pilgrimage in India in January. Ajahn invited me to go for that, so I'm quite excited. So I think I'll close the talk at this time. We'll have about another half hour. We can meditate together, and wish you all the best for your final 2 days of retreat here. Thank you.